WWE have just announced the releases of 9 different wrestlers. Now, I'm recording this, I'm learning this as it goes. I've already done one of these videos where it was only 6 or 7 names, but WWE keep updating their proper article to say who's been released. So there might be more releases by the time you're watching that. The best thing to do is go to WrestleTalk.com and stay up to date with stuff as it happens. As of right now, WWE.com have officially announced the releases of, and I'm afraid to do this for one last time it seems, Drake Maverick, real name James Curtin, Curt Hawkins, who's Brian Myers, Karl Anderson, Luke Gallows, Heath Slater, Eric Young, EC3, and Lio Rush. Initially, Eric Young and Luke Gallows' names weren't on that list. Instead, it was just Karl Anderson. And a lot of people were like, well, that's pretty bizarre. Why would you release Karl Anderson but keep Luke Gallows? And then he was added onto it. So Curt Hawkins right now is on there alone. He's in a tag team with Zack Ryder. That's the biggest part of his act currently. So, you know, if I'm Zack Ryder, I'm not feeling too comfortable with my position right now. This is, you know, it's a terrible situation. People are losing their jobs. Up until now, WWE hasn't cut ties with any wrestlers beyond the Revival last Friday. And that is really a different situation. It's unique in its own way because the Revival have been trying to leave WWE since last January when All Elite Wrestling launched. Not like January just gone. I'm talking a year and 4 months ago, pretty much. So when they were released, they were tweeting a lot about how they have exceeded their downside guarantee, so they're not getting paid for sitting at home right now. So they were released. That was a very different scenario to what we've got here, because by all accounts, I expect to hear the Revival on a Talk is Jericho podcast this Friday, pretty much signifying they're going to AEW as soon as that promotion starts making shows again. But this comes from the WWE just have seemingly not changed their minds, but they've decided on something over the last few days where they are going to go into complete cost-cutting mode. A report from PW Insider earlier, just a few hours ago, really. This has all transpired so quickly from a promotion that, and a company that has a lot of cash on hand. $500 million in cash WWE has, and that's not they've got other pockets of wealth as well. So they are in a very good position. But, if you are the head of a company, you've got to be looking at this in the long term. What if WWE, who survives so much on live events, not just having live event ticket revenue and merchandise revenue, but also having fans in attendance for shows to make the best TV product possible? Will the general audience on TV get tired of wrestling shows without fans in attendance? That certainly seems to be the case if you look at the last few weeks of ratings and the downward pattern there. Last Monday's episode of Raw was the Raw After Mania, 2.1 million viewers. That is atrocious. This week's was 1.9 million viewers. That's one of the lowest ratings in the show's history. So maybe Vince is looking at the long game of this. He closed down the XFL over the weekend. He filed for bankruptcy. He liquidated the assets there, wrote off some of the debt, I believe, and he laid off all the employees. That's a big cost-cutting measure in itself. And now there was this meeting with employees from Vince McMahon and presumably a lot of the staff. I don't know how they made that happen. Was that something done remotely on Zoom? Because, you've only got a select group of people there traveling at the Performance Center and in the local area. NXT is being broadcast live tonight. That's going to be a hell of a weird show, where PW Insider said that call, not the public version of that call, but the call that was just from people with the company, the main bullet points from just less than 5 minutes. This doesn't sound like a nice call, doesn't sound like I'm going to field questions. It's very much rip off the plaster, rip off the Band-Aid for you Americans to get this over with quickly. The PW Insider report, the main bullet points from that call were the McMahon informed staff there would be cuts and furloughs. Of course, furloughs is where employees can leave and then they can come back at a later date. And McMahon said that wasn't an easy decision for him to make. The company will be cutting back on pay for board members and executives, which is the right thing to do if you want to really honestly cut costs. You've got to start with the top. You've got to lead by example, and you've got to lower your wages and remuneration as to as little amount as possible, because you keep that money in the company and it sends a much nicer message. You often hear about companies keep on getting big bonus payouts for the top level executives when they're firing people left, right and centre at the bottom. The plans, which have been in the works for a while, to move WWE HQ from its Connecticut Titan Tower base to a new one in Stamford, that's been delayed for about 6 months apparently. And then the last point from that less than 5-minute call was that cuts will be made to the talent roster and the overall headcount of employees. Some will be relieved of their duties completely, some will be put on furlough. We are, of course, only being notified about the talent. Who knows how many back office staff, how many crew members, people you don't know the names of, but who make WWE as a company run, the real unsung heroes, how many people are losing their jobs right now. Again, I'm not sort of issuing blame at WWE. I understand that the situation they're in. This is different to them choosing to run shows 3 times a week. What WWE are going through now is something that all companies are struggling with. The decision to run the shows 3 times a week, however, is absolutely bonkers and morally reprehensible. I think I've said my piece on that already. So after that private 5-minute call with staff members and employees, WWE released a full statement to the press, really, and it's just running through effectively those points again: reducing executive and board member compensation, so that's top level executive pay packets, decreasing operating expenses, well, not running loads of shows will help you do that, cutting talent expenses, third-party staffing and consulting. So there are stories about WWE having certain people on the payroll, people like Vince Russo was one for a while, Max Landis, people who would sort of chip in ideas as off-site consultants, but that probably applies to more business level consultants as well. And deferring spend on the build out of the company's new headquarters for at least 6 months. And then it goes on: given the uncertainty of the situation, the company, WWE, also identified headcount reductions and made the decision to furlough a portion of its workforce. It does go on to say how WWE's decision to furlough those employees is because the company believes this situation will pass and they can bring those people back. And they are hoping to save through reductions of employee payment and, letting people go, which they sort of dress up as reducing headcount. They estimate to save $4 million monthly on that alone, and to create a cash flow improvement of $140 million from delaying the company's new building work. And then they talk about how they've got $500 million in cash at the moment, so that they've got like a solid base to see them through what is likely to be a tough and potentially very long period of financial struggle. But maybe with that, now's the time to. There's no right way to deal with this. Maybe there's an argument there. Well, you've got that much money in the bank. Maybe you could not release people, and you could put them on some kind of paid holiday leave. But that is certainly how we do things in Europe. It's quite different in America, it seems. But but at the same time, this is an opportunity to cut costs. And you look at the names that are released. I'm just going to refresh the page in case any more have been added. Oh God, I'm almost dreading to see any more names. Still just those 9 right now. But Drake Maverick, unfortunately, we know how talented he is as Rockstar Spud, hasn't really been used. It was only on Monday and Sunday, actually, that he was announced to be in the Cruiserweight tournament competition for NXT to crown a new champion. He stepped down from 205 Live's general manager position because of that. So that implies they didn't know that this was happening back then. Curt Hawkins really has just been an enhancement talent, as fun as he is. Karl Anderson and Luke Gallows as the OC, they only just re-signed a huge money deal last year before the summer. They seemed like they were going to go to AEW, but apparently WWE just kept on offering them more and more money. $750,000 each a year was the reported final amount that they agreed to. And it seems WWE are regretting that immediately because they've released them. Heath Slater, another unfortunate sort of enhancement talent who's really, really underutilized. He's a fantastic worker. Eric Young, we know that he had an excellent NXT run with Sanity, but that did not transpire to the main roster. But again, a very talented utility player. EC3, someone we thought was destined to succeed on the main roster, but Vince McMahon gave up on him when Dean Ambrose started getting cheered, when the idea was to get Dean Ambrose buried on his way out of the company. And Lio Rush, who has had a litany of sort of backstage heat rumours and reports around him with his sort of Bobby Lashley manager run. He sort of stepped away. He seemed to be on his way out last year because of that, but he's come back. He was a cruiserweight champion, and he seemed to be in a better place with the company. So that's a bit of a shock too. I'm just going to give one more refresh. Currently still those names only. Good grief. Well, what a day. Join us on Quizzlemania on Parts of Unknown later. I mean, it's an awful situation. And go back to see the news from today to see that the other stuff that WWE are doing. And make sure to subscribe because we'll have much more on this developing situation as it unfolds. And hopefully no more releases tomorrow. I've been Ollie Davis, and that was wrestling.